This is kind of a rant for day 65, but I recently just posted a video about Spotify and streaming numbers and how much I made. And the more I talk to other artists and think about this stuff, the more I realize that to be an artist is taking a little bit from a lot of sources rather than a lot from a little bit of sources. And what I mean by that is, like, being an artist, there are so many different types of revenue streams, and you have to be able to kind of tap into those to be able to make a living. Unfortunately, you don't make much of your income from streaming unless you're one of the rare few, the lucky few that can. And even they have other contingency plans, because being an artist is up and down. Sometimes your songs will get you $10K a month, or $1,000 a month, or $3,000 a month, and sometimes you'll get $30. It's just the way that streaming works. It just depends on how popular you are at that moment and how sustainable that is. And for some, it might be a little sustainable, but for others, it's not quite that sustainable. So a lot of times you have to end up spending time working on other things. You have to figure out other revenue streams, more direct to consumer type stuff like Bandcamp, and they can buy it, and Patreon and things like that, to be able to make the money needed to make a living off of music. You have to do live shows, you have to do merch, you have to do events. And I think people don't realize how much work goes into being a musician. And it's just one of my rants, because I honestly get so annoyed sometimes, even with like my grandfather being a music producer who's literally won a Grammy and a music marketer, and there will still be people who pretend like that's not a real job. And it's like, this man won a Grammy. Like, what does it take? Like, what does it take? You have to like walk on water or something to be able to be considered a job. And it's starting to become better now, but like, you hear the debate about computer music versus live music versus this. Like, I'm sorry, but I've done both live music and digital music, and digital music makes me happy, but live music makes me happy too. But I think it's frustrating when people try to compare the two, like there's one that's better or worse than the other. It's just a medium. Just like artists have a paintbrush versus a pencil or a pen, or they use multimedia. People are like, oh, that's cool, they made art out of something that no one ever thought of. But the second someone on a computer makes a song, oh, you're just a little dude on a computer making a song, it's not a big deal. Like, it is. Not everyone can do that, and not everyone has the grit to do that. And I think people forget that people work to do those things. Some things come naturally, but it's still a part of life to be able to train for the things that you want to do. And you're training to be a musician, and on top of that, you have to be a lot of different things. I watched a video on game development, and they made a really good point that game developers, they are sometimes musicians, artists, even though they can outsource, but a lot of times they have to do those things on their own because they do not have the money or resources to find someone to make art for them, to pay them to do all that part. So they're learning that. They're learning sound design. They're learning how to model, sometimes how to draw, sometimes you're learning all different parts of game development. And it's the same thing for musicians. You're learning how to market. You're learning how to make videos. You're learning how to make music in whatever capacity you do, whether live or digital or both. And then you have to know how to make a show. You have to know how to find a show. You have to find shows. Many people can't afford managers, and they're early on in their career and they don't see needing a manager. And a lot of times it's hard to get one when you're that early on. So it's a whole plethora of things that you have to have. And on top of all of that, you have things like album art. You have things like negotiations, contracts. And a lot of people do not have enough money to be a music lawyer, have music lawyers. So it's just very hard because people get their music stolen. People get samples when they didn't even know they were being sampled. People get royalties taken off of songs, all types of crazy stuff, the horror stories. And on top of all that, you only get paid for Spotify like 2 to 3 months later. So you don't even get paid for Spotify like the month after it does well. You gotta wait 2-3 months, depending on how fast those royalties come in. So it's a struggle. And I think people forget that it's so much work. It's not just easy. It's a lot when you want to make your passion your job. And that's applicable to any passion, really. If you're a woodworker, if you're an artist, if you're a musician, they all require you to put forth much effort and use your potential and ability and dedication to train and learn to be able to learn those things, to do it the way that you want to. So I personally despise when people say it's not a real job, or they say like, oh, you won't make any money, you might as well not try, things like that. There are ways. It just depends on the climate, as of anything. With music, it used to be that you would get a hit, you'd sell records, and you get on a label and you're good. But it's not quite like that anymore. With all the independent people, you have to spend more time finding other alternative revenue streams, other places to perform at, other things to do, and it's not as easy as it may seem. It's not just like you come out with one TikTok and happen to blow up. It doesn't happen for that. For many people, it's a long grind. And even then, you might think someone just blew up, but in reality, many times they had other personas or projects that they were working on that did not blow up. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it doesn't come easy, but there are ways to make money from it. It is a real job, and you just have to search for the things that work for you. If that's Bandcamp, if that's Patreon, if that's Audius, if that's YouTube, if that's sync licensing, there's so many different ways, and I could do a part 2 on that because I did a whole video on that. But there are ways to do it, and I believe in you. I think that you can do it. It'll take a lot of work, like anything else. It'll take a lot of dedication, and it'll take a lot of you searching, and the varying levels of success is just based on that. A little bit of it is luck, but a lot of it comes with knowing where to go and what to find. So on that note, I will see you tomorrow.